We're gonna start off by taking the float bowl off. You can just take this bottom bolt here out. To take the float bowl off, all you have to do is take the middle bolt out. The other one is just a drain, so you can leave it sealed up. Make sure when you take it out not to lose the sealing washer off of it. There's also an O-ring right here. It's green on this one. You can kind of see it. That seals the float bowl there. Very easy to overstretch those and make them to where they don't want to work. So if you can get by, just leave it in there in the groove so you know it's in the groove and it's not getting stretched out. It's the main jet, which would be that brass piece right down in there. I'll take that out so you can see what that looks like. Also, that hole right there is the only place for fuel to get into the main jet. And on this side, because the bolt that puts your bowl on goes through there, so it blocks. So those holes need to be opened up as well as the main jet. You have to be kind of careful with those jets because they are brass, so you don't want to break off one of the ears. So I'll go through your full toolbox and find a screwdriver that fits it well. Before you do that, go ahead and take the float out. You can pull this pin here out. If we don't do it now, it's just gonna fall out while you're messing with stuff and then you won't be able to find it. Just pull straight out. Float needle there. Looks like it uses a rubber tip in this one. And the seat is not replaceable, but the seat does look really good. Besides, there is a little bit of dirt in there, which is expected considering the condition that tank was in. Looks like the emulsion tube came out with the main jet, so make sure you pay attention to that. I don't know if you can see this on the camera, but it actually appears to be open, and it is slightly. You can see the lighter hole in the middle, and the outside is a film of fuel, bad fuel that is built up, so it's partially plugging it. I'm just gonna blow through it and show you what it should like. That's how it's supposed to be. See the difference in the fuel that's getting metered into the engine, and that's what makes it run bad. To put it simply, for some of you that may not understand with the terms I'm using, because on my machine, when I started up, use the choke. With the choke on, it ran fine. When I shut the choke off, it would die out and have low power. So even with the engine warm and I had the choke on, it would always stay running. It would run better with the choke on. That means that the engine is starving for fuel, because when you pull the choke, you're shutting the butterfly valve and allowing more fuel in and less air. So that told me that there is a restriction in the fuel system somewhere that is not allowing the right amount of fuel for normal operating with the choke off, and that's why I had to compensate by pulling the choke. So anytime you have an issue where the machine dies as soon as you shut the choke off, that's a carburetor problem. You're gonna have fuel either not getting into the float bowl enough to keep it running, or a blocked jet, or something of that form. Also, when going through a carburetor, most people just blow that out, put it back together, stop there. I recommend don't do that, because the odds are you put it on the machine and there's another problem and you'll have to pull it all back out. So you might as well go through the whole thing while it's off. And you guys don't have to do this. I wouldn't recommend it, but I'm gonna go ahead and pull all of this apart, check everything out. But for everybody else, I would just recommend cleaning out the main jet passage, the needle seat very well, and its passage. And then I'll show you how to get to the fuel screw, which is going to be behind that plug right there. And we can then adjust the idle fuel mixture. And also you can take that all the way out before you put it back together and blow through there too, because the same fuel that comes through here goes through a passage to that too. So if you just clean this out and this is still plugged up, you're still gonna have the same issue. I also wanted to show you need to take this out too. To be able to get that out, you need to take out your throttle stop screw. Once that's out, you can pull the holder out of that and then reach in there and pull that jet out of there. It's gonna look like that. There's two holes, two passages, one in the bottom, and there's two on the, I don't know if you'll be able to see it right here. There's one there, and then one over there on each side. Fuel flows through there after it goes through this, so Need to make sure to clean this jet out too, which looks like it's completely plugged. And there's the holes on the side that it goes. If you have a jet that is clogged up pretty bad and you can't get air or contact cleaner, go through and blow it out. You can cut a short piece of wire, pull one strand out, and you can use that to run through the jet. I pulled a single piece of wire out of there. You can kind of see it. Sorry, I'm recording this on a camera, but. Okay, so I've got everything on the top side cleaned up and ready to go. I'll show you how to put together the bottom side again. The first thing you're going to want to put in is the emulsion tube, and the skinny end right here goes into the carburetor first. That way you want the big end down here with the jet. And the reason for that is that the skinny end, if you look in here, it comes down into the carburetor bore. Once you have the emulsion tube in, you can go ahead and put the jet back in. You know you've already cleaned it, it's wide open. Don't have to get crazy with tightening this up. If you do, you'll break it off, so just snug it up. And we know these holes on the side where the fuel gets in are clear. You can see the top of the jet through those. This gasket is good. We'll go ahead and put the float back in. Make sure it's clean, doesn't have any cracks, doesn't have any fuel in it. It goes together just like this. The spring goes on the underneath side of the float, and then it hooks on, slides in right there. Make sure that's locked in, the rubber tip's still there. And then just set it inside of, make sure the needle goes into the seat, and then slide the pin back through this hole. Now it floats in, make sure the pin's about even on both sides. Make sure it's functioning, opening and closing correctly. It looks like the float height is about even. So that's probably fine. Don't need to worry about getting crazy with it. If you notice, the shape of the bowl is the shape of the float, so it needs to go on like this. And if you put it on like that, your float is going to hit and not open all the way. So make sure when you put it on, this drain bolt goes to the side of the needle. Then grab your bolt, make sure the sealing washer is still on it. You can go ahead and make sure this is all lined up right, and kind of wiggle it back and forth to make sure. As soon as you get this in and tightened back up, you can then shake the carburetor and you should be able to hear the float moving. Okay, we've got that all back together. I want to show you here on this jet on the top side, there are 2 O-rings on it. Make sure those are still there. You can see one at the bottom and then one up in the top groove right here. And you can see I've taken my wire that I pulled out of there and ran through the jet to make sure it is open. You can see the wire came through, so it is open. It is a very small hole, so I recommend doing that. I'm not super familiar with this particular carburetor. It's been updated a little bit over the years since I've worked on these last, but it does look like this is actually a slow jet or an idle jet. So that if that is plugged, your machine will not idle, which we kind of had that issue. Once you know that it's open, go ahead and place it back down in there. And you want to put the flat side up against the carburetor so it goes in. It won't go all the way in. There's a little shoulder there that it will set on. Just go ahead and make sure it's in there, sealed. And then put the stop piece that holds it down. Slide it back in there. And then when you put your idle stop screw in back into here, that's what holds that down. I forgot to mention, you might want to count how many turns out this is before you take it all the way out. That way you can kind of get it close when you put it back together. Mine was exactly 1 turn out, so I'm going to go ahead and this is how that throttle stop screw works. Obviously their butterfly is open, that's wide open. And then when you idle down your machine, this will close, which closes the butterfly, and obviously if it's a little bit open, that lets a little bit of air and fuel through, which controls your idle. Again, to make sure your float is not stuck on the bowl. You can hear it. And just because I'm a curious person and I want to know what they've done with the mixture screw here, I'm gonna go ahead and use a chisel and try to tap a groove into the end of that so I get a flat screwdriver on there to take it out and see if it is the mixture screw. Now it is brass, so it doesn't take much, but you can see that I've kind of chiseled a flat screwdriver tip in there. I held it in my hands instead of laying it on the ground, because if you lay it on the ground, try and tap on that, you're probably going to break off one of the plastic levers. Okay, so I was able to get that out, and it is in fact a fuel screw. So that is where you would adjust that at. Why it's like that nowadays, I don't know. But yeah, there's no reason to take out that Welch plug there, because it is not where the mixture screw is. You can see that the fuel comes through that jet, through a passage behind the Welch plug, and out through a hole here where the mixture screw meters it in through that hole. When I put that back in, ran it all the way in, softly seated it, and then backed it out to about 1 turn. That's about where they should be, but you can fine tune them once you get it back on there and running. As for now, this is all completed. I'm gonna go ahead and put it back on the machine and